talk about the year for anniversaries. The day that I'm putting up this review is 40 years to the day that Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes was released. The Hills Have Eyes is one of my all-time favorite Wes Craven movies. It's the second film he ever made, and it was the first movie that was reviewed for Old School Trailer Hounds, and saw this movie maybe 6 or 7 years ago. It's always hard to remember exactly when, but I remember this is back when my mom was very strict on what R-rated movies I could watch, so I had to watch it the first time with my grandfather, and this is one of the less awkward movies to watch with my grandfather. Someday I'll tell about A Clockwork Orange, and it wasn't that awkward, but still, Clockwork Orange is an interesting film to see for the first time with your grandfather sitting right next to you. But my grandfather, he's a very cool guy. Anybody who watches me has seen him in a few of the co-reviews we've done. And The Hills Have Eyes was one of those movies, and I just love this film. It's great, and it was made 5 years after Wes Craven made The Last House on the Left, which I reviewed 2 years ago in October. The Last House on the Left is a great film. It's a true horror show. Very interesting, very unique. The Hills Have Eyes is equally as great, but it's a very different movie than Last House on the Left. Last House on the Left, it's hard to describe. It has a bit more of a deeper impact. The Hills Have Eyes is very intense, very emotional, but in some way it's more of a on the edge of your seat, almost action type movie. But it manages to evoke some genuine emotion from you, and you really care about what happens in this film. The plot is a family known as the Carter family and their daughter, who's now married to a guy with the last name Wood, are traveling through the desert, stopping at a silver mine on their way to California. And the area that they're going to see if they can find this mine is inhabited by a family of rabbit cannibals. And I know the idea sounds a little silly, but this film really makes it work. Wes Craven's writing and direction really makes it intense, and this film genuinely scares you. And a lot of it has to do with the way it's shot, the cinematography, and the locations. They really picked a truly chilling place in the desert to film. And I remember watching The Hills Have Eyes a few years ago with my old friend Matt and the other friend who I'm not going to name. And something that we talked about after we saw it all those years ago was just how eerie the hills in the film look. And the characters in the film show their unease at just the surroundings around them. And there are these great shots of the hills at night, at that point where the sun's either going down or it's coming up, and the sky has that weird fluorescent tint to it. And I remember talking with Matt just about how the creepy idea of what if the hills could watch you. The area has a very isolated feel, and you can see how someone in a place like that could feel paranoid being surrounded by all these hills and not knowing if there's anybody out there. I used to love climbing rocks a lot, and I could say I wouldn't want to climb the areas in this desert. And as I've said many times, one of the key elements to many horror films is the music score, and the music score here is great. It scares you, it gets your blood pumping in the horror and the action type scenes, and it's done by a guy named Don Peake. Peake. His music here is just incredible, and my favorite scoring is in the second half when the two families are going against each other and we just hear this great it just sounds terrific. Before I forget, there should also be major props for this film's cinematographer, who had a lot to work with here. He had to really make the desert area look terrifying. Eric Saarinen, Saarinen. Eric and Dawn, their contributions were just perfect. They were great, and Wes Craven got himself a great crew here. He worked with a lot of truly professional people for this movie. And in the producer he got was Peter Locke, who I don't know from a ton of other stuff. I looked him up, and it seems after The Hills Have Eyes, he had a lot of TV credits as a producer, and he actually has a cameo here as one of the cannibal family members.
Papa, you be so happy? Maybe I make a joke like last time. You think everybody laughed? We always laugh at you, McRae. Coming through. Okay, Pluto.
This movie is, when you come down to it, a survival movie, where this family from the big cities, or just civilization in general, are on vacation, and they wind up in a very rural, isolated area, and they have what they have, but they don't know how to truly survive. And the family that lives in the desert, which, by the way, the area that they're in is established early on as being a nuclear bomb test site, so it's implied that living in this area has caused the cannibal family to, in some way, either mutate or just it contributed to the insanity that they have, or their depravity. And the film's trailer put it best: a night of terror, a day of vengeance. No one was spared. No one.
The hills have eyes. A night of terror, a day of vengeance, where no one was spared. No one.
The Hills Have Eyes is extremely well paced. It's only 88 minutes, and the pacing is great. It starts off with them coming to the desert, and the transitioning to them feeling isolated, and then the cannibal family finally appearing is perfect. You don't feel like it's too rushed, you don't feel like you're getting too little, and when they finally show up, you just sit there and you feel that scared feeling you get on the back of your neck when you see a great horror film. And then the next day, it becomes about the Carter family doing everything they can to get out and also to kill the cannibals. And I'll get into my favorite scenes in a little bit, but first, let's get into the cast. The Carter family is made up of the mom and dad of all the young adults, Big Bob Carter, played by Russ Grieve, and his wife Ethel Carter, played by Virginia Vincent. As far as parents who come from a different time period, like their kids are very much products of the 60s and 70s. They got the very 70s look to them, like with the hairstyles, the way they dress, and look a little more free-spirited. And the parents definitely look like 1940s or 50s type people. But despite that, the parents and the kids get along very well. And like the parents are very grumpy, and something I thought was always funny was the parents, these kids look like they're in their 20s, like early to late 20s. The parents look almost like they could be their grandparents. I don't know, maybe they had their kids late in life. And the Big Bob character, he's a cranky old man, mustache, a little bit of a comb-over. And the character is supposed to be an ex-cop. And the main thing about him is he's just a big grump. He's got like heart problems. And he's also implied to be a little bit of a racist. Or maybe that's just him talking under the stress. There's a lot going on, but there's this scene where he's just stressed out and...
25 years I'm a cop in the worst goddamn precinct in Cleveland. Niggers shoot arrows at me and the hillbillies throw dogs off the roofs at me. And I'm even shot at on 2 separate occasions by my own men. But none of these bastards ever come as close to killing me as my own goddamn wife and her goddamn roadmap.
And he's just, he's just being a big, gruffy asshole. But at the same time, you feel like a lot of people might have a dad like this. And the mom character is, I guess you could call her old-fashioned in the sense that she rarely gets angry and she doesn't really care for profanity. And she tries to keep everything nice and good-natured.
Watch your language. And you watch your heart, too. You know what Dr. Springer said.
Well, Dr. Springer can take his stethoscope and shove it into his little black bag sideways.
And she's also always saying, thank the Lord, and before the family parts ways after they accidentally get stranded, to gather together and say a prayer saying, ask the Lord to protect us. Yeah, and, and then we see that didn't do much good. And the mom character is a little annoying, but the thing about these parents, like, the kids are a different story, but most of the characters in this film feel, for the most part, pretty real. And there's this very well done moment around the middle of the film. There's this moment in the middle of the film where the cannibal family has killed Big Bob in a, I guess, symbolic way. I don't put too much thought into it. Guess it maybe was meant just to be shocking, where Big Bob is crucified up against a cactus. Ouch. And he's set on fire. And after they put out the fire and he's dying from his wounds, he looks like a big black crispy piece of meat. The mom is like, she's crying, just acting a little crazy, going, that's not my Bob, that's not my Bob. Just too shocked to believe that what's happened to her husband.
That's not my Bob. That's not my Bob. That's not my Bob. My Bob. That's not my...
He wants some more. No, not Bob. Man.
The younger members of the Carter family include the youngest daughter, Brenda Carter, played by Susie Lanier Bramlett. And she comes off like a teenage girl, maybe early 20s, maybe 19. It's hard to tell, but she comes off as young and the usual young, bitchy girl type character. But she's got her moments. Like, all the young people in this film have their flaws, but overall, you do feel like you want to root for them. And then there's the older daughter, who's married, Linwood, played by, and many people might know this actress, Dee Wallace. For those who don't know, she was the mother in E.T. She plays a young mother here, married to a guy named Doug Wood, played by Martin Spear, and they have a little baby named Katie, who doesn't look like she's even a year old. And they seem like easygoing people, like not that far in, say, culture perspectives from the parents, but they don't think the same way. But they get along very well, and it's pretty clear they love each other and they care about their kid. And overall, they, I guess, come off as, if anything, decent and undeserving of what's going to happen as the film goes on. Then there's the son of the family, Bobby Carter, played by Robert Houston, who later in his career, after, I guess, acting didn't lead to stardom, became a producer and ended up actually winning a Academy Award for making a short film documentary. This is back in like the early 2000s. If you want to know what, just look up Robert Houston and you'll find out. It's pretty cool that that's what he went on to. It's like Fisher Stevens winning an Oscar for Best Documentary. Just never would have thought that back in the 80s. The Bobby character he's definitely the most flawed and, I guess, not the best written character. Like, Wes Craven was a great writer, but I guess there's always that one character who everybody just didn't know what to do with or didn't do the best job with. Bobby, he's supposed to be a kind of smug little shit, and I guess showing the, I don't know if sexist or maybe just chauvinistic attitude of the 70s. When the dad leaves to go look for help, he tells Bobby he's in charge because he's his son, so he goes, "You're the man of the house now." And I sit there looking and seeing what a doofus this guy is. I just think, okay, if you're going to make someone the man, why not have it be the Doug character? And even then, what's wrong with the mom character? I mean, I look at this Bobby character and I would not leave this dumb little shit in charge. I mean, he acts like he's a real idiot and tries to act like he's better than everybody, and as the film goes on, he really shows that he's borderline retarded, pretty much. He is by far, I think, the weakest of the young characters. The mother is not particularly strong, but she never tries to act like she's stronger than she is, and the Bobby character definitely is that, so I didn't really like him a ton, but I still wanted everybody in the Carter family to get out. The first sign that shows that Bobby's a dumbass is when the family's dog, they have two dogs, cleverly named Beauty and the Beast. And Beauty runs off into the hills. Bobby chases after her, and when he finds her, she's killed and her insides are bleeding out. And when Bobby comes back, what does he do? He keeps to himself, and when they ask what happened to Beauty, he just says, "She must have run off." I'm just sitting here thinking, what?
Didn't you find Beauty?
She must have run off.
And finally, about almost 50 minutes into the film, he finally tells everybody, after some weird shit's been going on, that he found Beauty dead. And just saying, "Beauty died," causes him to blow snot or drool out of his mouth. And he is just such a pathetic wimp in this.
Beauty's dead.
What?
Beauty's been dead since this afternoon.
Beauty's dead. What happened? Why didn't you tell us sooner?
He got a bit on my nerves at times. But thanks to the other characters, he wasn't a complete waste. And I'll get into that later. The cannibals who make up the second family in the film, they are fucking just absolutely terrifying, and I wish I had more words than just horror and terror to describe the cannibals. This family doesn't really have a last name. Like, all the males in this cannibal family are named after the planets. The leader is like the father, and he's named Papa Jupiter, played by James Whitworth. And the family is terrifying, but I will say they are a little two-dimensional, but the actors make up for it in just how well they're able to express just how evil and demented these motherfuckers are. James Whitworth, particularly, he starts out a little weak, but then he gets much stronger, and you really feel chilled when you watch him. But also you see this cannibal family, for the most part, there is one who wishes to get out, but for the most part this family is pretty tight, and it's pretty clear Papa Jupiter, to the family members who are loyal, he loves them, and that's not a good point for him. He is still an evil, disgusting, almost a non-human character. Just, he has this great gruff voice, and he has this huge scar. The most chilling moment is where he says through a walkie-talkie,
Mark! You get him? Kill the baby!
and the other members of the cannibal family are the mama cannibal, who is by far the smallest and definitely the least interesting character. There's nothing to her than that she's fat and gross and she eats other humans. The mother character is definitely the least interesting, and that's saying much considering that Peter Locke has a cameo as one of the cannibal members. Goes by the name Mercury, and his character's killed off after almost just a minute of screen time. But even then, he's much more interesting because we get to see him a little bit in action. But yeah, the mama cannibal is played by Cordy Clark. Don't know her from anything else.
What's the matter? You don't like dog anymore? Maybe dog's too good for a runaway slut like you.
And I meant to mention this at the very beginning. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. This may seem a bit out of nowhere right now, but I have to say this before I forget. And sometimes I have a hard time remembering. I don't know if anybody remembers, but on my wall, I have many movie posters. Like over there, behind the camera, I have a poster for The Hills Have Eyes. Great poster. And just like the Dawn of the Dead poster, just, it's sometimes funny sitting here and then to have your eyes go up and see that face, those faces just staring back at you. Like, ugh. Especially when you've been drinking when it happens. after the film opens with the great panning shots of the dark fluorescent lighted hills, we cut to this gas station, which already, like, yeah, gas station in the desert in a horror film, but this is one of the first, I think, and it's shot so well here. We're introduced to this drunk old man named Fred, played by John Stedman, and then this dirt-covered, black-toothed young girl comes in named Ruby, played by Janice Blythe, Blythe, and she's the only daughter of Papa Jupiter, and turns out the cannibals come to Fred's gas station and trade shit they collect from their victims to him in exchange for, like, food and maybe weapons or alcohol. And we eventually find out later that Fred is the father of Papa Jupiter and the grandfather of all the planet-named kids. And according to Fred, as a kid, Jupiter was always psychotic to the point that he murdered his siblings and the rest of the family. And Fred, guess showing the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, left his son to die in the desert, and Jupiter stayed there ever since, and then got, as Fred put it, some whore no one would miss, and had all the cannibal mutant kids.
There'll be hell to pay now.
Janice Blythe as Ruby, her performance is one of the ones that really sticks out above all the others. And the Ruby character is, I think I would say, my favorite character in the film. She's sympathetic and, despite the dirtiness, a bit cute. And next to the Carter family, you hope Ruby can get away. And she really later helps out. And then there's the, even more than Papa Jupiter, the scariest members of the cannibal family, Mars, played by Lance Gordon, and Pluto, played by the very talented horror genre actor Michael Berryman. Michael Berryman, he has a very non-human look to him, which he's put to good use. And it's because of a condition he has called hypohidrotic ectodermal dysplasia, where he does not have sweat glands. He can't grow hair, teeth, or fingernails. And despite him guessing what his hard life to have with that condition, he's used his appearance to get him some pretty good scary roles. And what's really admirable about Michael Berryman is, despite not having sweat glands, he was able to work on this film, which I'm guessing must have taken a few months to make, in the middle of the desert where it was over 100 degrees in the daylight. That must have been fucking brutal. I mean, even more for him. And he's got a good sense of humor about things. Apparently he went to a movie screening of The Hills Have Eyes, and there was a woman in front of him in the theater that said, "This movie is sick and depraved." And Berryman thought it would be funny to lean over and say, "You're damn right, lady, this movie is sick." That is cool. And just a few other quick behind the scenes facts before I move into my favorite parts of the film. Susie Lanier Bramlett, who plays Brenda, there was some tension on the set during the filming of a scene where the Brenda character is raped by Pluto and Mars. Like, there was tension amongst the crew for filming a disturbing scene like that, and Susie and Michael Berryman, to get everybody to ease up a little on the first take, just started making out. And apparently caused everyone to have a good laugh. And Susie Lanier Bramlett said that her agent at the time didn't want her to take the role of Brenda, thinking the movie could hurt her career, but she was a fan of horror, and she said she liked Wes Craven, so she went ahead and was like, fuck off, whatever your name is. My kind of lady. And Wes Craven, this was a low-budget movie. It was made on a budget of $230,000, and showing how his career was really picking up, it made over $25 million. But the budget was so low that Wes Craven, like, when you make a movie, most times you need to rent the equipment like a professional movie. Wes Craven has said that the cameras that they used for The Hills Have Eyes were rented from a famous California pornographer. Hey, gotta do what you gotta do. Just make sure the cameras didn't get hit during the filming of the said porn films. And Janice Blythe, when she auditioned for the role of Ruby, the audition process required the actresses to have a foot race because the Ruby character does a lot of running in the final act. Apparently, Wes Craven shouted the actresses, he told them to go. Janice Blythe stood behind for a moment, then after a moment took off and beat all the other actresses to the finish line. And that is how she got the role. She also says that Wes Craven kept insisting she be covered in more dirt throughout shooting, thinking she looked too pretty to have been living in the desert all of her life. Guess that's the downside of working to be a star all your life when it comes time to play the dirty and gritty roles. Okay, time to talk about my favorite scenes in this flick. My favorite scene in the whole film is the scene where Pluto and Mars invade the family's trailer, and I just think this whole sequence is extremely well shot and totally gripping, and I am genuinely terrified for all the other characters in this scene. Get this great moment where Bobby is trying to open the door and he thinks he locked himself out, and then we cut inside and we see he didn't, and Pluto is standing by the door in his caveman-like outfit holding a knife ready to kill. And a particular moment that I just think is excellent, that just causes my emotions to shoot up, is when Pluto is in the trailer and he's standing over the sleeping Brenda and holding a walkie-talkie says, "Do it!" And then we cut to outside and we see a huge explosion.
Do it.
It's hard. I don't know what to say to elaborate. Just that moment just stands out to me as extremely suspenseful and chilling. I know I'm saying chilling a lot. It's the word of the day, I guess. And Mars comes into the trailer, and they start stealing everything they can find, and Pluto and Mars brutally rape the character Brenda, and they kidnap the baby. And Mars gets some good, just almost monster-like moments where he grabs the family's pet bird, rips its head off, and then acts like he's drinking like a beer. And then Mars stops Pluto from raping Brenda just so he can take over. And the anger that Pluto shows throughout this scene, where he starts destroying the inside of the trailer, is just, I think, a very well acted moment from Michael Berryman that just makes you think, I would not want to be in the room with this guy. And Lance Gordon as Mars, when he takes the baby, says to Brenda, "Baby fat, you fat, fat and juicy."
Baby's fat. You fat. Fat and juicy.
Oh, horrifying. And then, just as they take the baby, Dee Wallace's character comes in and she attempts to stop Mars from taking her kid, and it's a really rough fight. She does not go down easy. Dee Wallace, like, Mars is stronger, but she keeps fighting, and when she gets the chance to get his knife, she swings and stabs at him and actually gets some good stabs in. And she just is, you can just see she is not giving up until he takes a gun and shoots her dead. And what I like about this moment, this scene, is, this may sound a little odd to some people, but I like scenes that show a parent attacking and trying to kill somebody who is hurting their kid, because to me that is an example of true parental love. Like, if someone is going to try and take or hurt someone's kid, I feel any parent that truly loves their kid will do whatever it takes to stop said person. And even though she died, I feel like she put up a good fight, and I thought it was extremely well done, and it was sad to see her die. And Martin Spear as Doug, he is the best actor in the film after Janice Blythe. And the acting he shows after his wife is killed and his daughter has been taken. The brokenness he has after not being able to find his daughter, just, I felt like crying a little.
Why are you doing this? What do you want? Damn you! How many
my baby. My Catherine.
And in the latter part of the film, where he finally finds where the family is located, and he goes in to rescue his daughter, I felt, honestly, I felt a little teary-eyed, because I just wanted to see him save her. This is definitely the type of parental love I like to see in movies. The last part of this film is just excellent, where the kids, the young ones, Bobby and Brenda, stay at the trailer, and their mother was shot earlier and has since died. And showing how the character Brenda has gotten more complex as the film goes on, like she's been raped, and she has spent the whole night crying and dealing with the trauma, and her brother, being the dumbass he is, just acts like an insensitive little shit and tells her to keep it down. And showing once again how I feel like the Bobby character is the one with the most problems. Like, all he did was see a dead dog and he was broken to the point where he could barely talk. His sister, she was raped, and while she did go through a period of not being able to say or do much, she is the one who comes up with the plan to take down Papa Jupiter. And it's actually a very clever plan. Showing that they're desperate and will do whatever it takes. They take their mother's dead body, put it out in a chair in the desert, and they hook up a cable wire to their car's, which is stuck, wheel. So when Papa Jupiter comes in and sees their mother's dead body, they start up the car, and the cable snatches Jupiter and just drags him through the desert. This is a good trademark of Wes Craven that he used in Last House, Hills Have Eyes, and Nightmare on Elm Street. Having the protagonist defeat the bad guys through setting up some crude booby trap. And the way these two take down this brother and sister who didn't get along in the beginning, seeing them work together and take down Papa Jupiter was just incredible to watch. And the family's surviving dog, the Beast, takes down Pluto in a very good attack scene. This dog just rips Pluto's Achilles tendon to shreds. Doug, meanwhile, finally finds where the family is, and Ruby, not wanting the baby to die, saves Katie and takes her to Doug, and together Doug and Katie work to stop Mars. And it's just cool seeing my two favorite characters work together, showing the one good member of the cannibal family and the most emotionally driven member of the Carter Wood family just work together, and seeing Doug's emotions come to the surface and seeing him fight Mars out of anger and hate for killing his wife and taking his daughter, just showing just like what he's doing is he's killing him, but you can see it's coming from a place of heartbreak and love, just getting payback and revenge, and just taking him out. My one biggest problem, aside from the Bobby character with The Hills Have Eyes, is the way The Hills Have Eyes ends. You see, Doug kills Mars, just stabs him repeatedly over and over, and looking down at Mars's dead body, the whole screen just freezes in a red tint of Doug, and then, just like that, we suddenly see the end, and the credits start rolling. That's my one big gripe with The Hills Have Eyes. The film ends really abruptly. Like, it almost feels like there should have been at least 5 or 10 more minutes of movie to wrap things up, but no, it just ends right there. And I remember the first time I watched this, I was like, wait, that's it? And I just feel like there should have been more of a wraparound. And I read and I saw on the DVD, there actually was an ending where they wrap things up, where the family's reunited and the surviving members take Ruby with them and head towards civilization. It was actually surprisingly a upbeat ending, which I'm guessing they might have felt was a bit too upbeat for such a dark film, but at the same time it would have been nice to have a little closure. I mean, it doesn't ruin anything, but the way it ends is just so abrupt and sudden. I'm kind of feels like a slap across the face, like, wait, what happens next? That's one of my only few complaints about this film. It ends way too fast. Other than that, amazing, amazing fucking climax. I goddamn loved it. So, that was my 40th anniversary review for The Hills Have Eyes. It maybe could have been a little better done, but I love this film, and that's just what I wanted to overall say. I love it, and it's almost perfect. I would give it a 7.9 out of 10. The biggest flaws are the character Bobby and the abrupt ending. Other than that, love it, and there is no reason you shouldn't like this film unless you're oversensitive or easily disturbed. But if you love horror movies, you love suspense movies, you love horror films with a little action in them, then you will definitely love Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes. It's been almost 2 years since Wes Craven died, and he made some great films. I don't know what to say other than he's one of those filmmakers who I greatly admire. I love his work. I respect his work. It gave me a lot of inspiration. I miss him. It's one of those directors who I just have a hard time believing is no longer alive. And I don't want to go out on a downbeat note, so I'll just say he was a true master of horror. His work, all of his movies, are definitely worth checking out. Hope the month of July has been going well for everybody who watches me, and I will see you next week.